Vigilantes is a spin-off of the popular anime and manga My Hero Academia. The story takes place about 5 to 6 years prior to the main story in MHA and follows Koichi Himawari, an average 19-year-old college student who aspires to be a hero. His general character and tone is written very similar to Deku. He's altruistic, awkward at times, and a very likable protagonist for the viewers to follow. Koichi has a mundane, unassuming quirk that allows him to slide along any surface at a moderate speed comparable to that of like a bicycle. The catch, however, is that he needs to have 3 points of contact on the surface in order to do so. It's a simple, underwhelming mobility quirk. At the beginning of our series, Koichi has resigned himself to just helping people around him in his community in lieu of his dreams of becoming a real hero. His actions are limited to that of helping people find lost pets or picking up trash around the neighborhood. Suffice to say, he's not living out his dream. That is, at least, until he meets Knuckle Duster. Knuckle Duster is the coolest non-quirk hero we have ever seen in this universe. He's a regular man who just happens to be really strong and has a gumption for justice and sniffing out crime. He shows Koichi that you don't need flashy power to be a hero. He takes care of the criminal activity that happens in the streets that the big heroes don't see, and he acts as a sort of mentor character to Koichi throughout the show, Koichi even referring to him as Master. Popstep rounds out our team. She is about 14 years old and is a local idol pop star performer by day and becomes a crime-fighting vigilante by night with our team. Her quirk ability is to be able to jump super high without taking any damage. Not a crazy powerful quirk, but one that certainly has its unique uses and applications. This series follows our team as they do their best to help fight against the underbelly of criminal activity that is occurring in their city, Naruhata. Our characters are juxtaposed to the heroes we know in our main story. The series even goes out of their way to highlight cameos from characters we know, like Eraserhead, Lady Midnight, and Ingenium, Ida's older brother. We see how they operate within the system and the limitations that exist within that system, while also seeing our characters navigate the streets and back alleys that go below the system, the side of the city that big heroes can't always see or access. To be honest, this series is a lot of fun and makes for a perfect extension to the MHA universe. I might be bold to say this, but this honestly feels like one of the best companion pieces of content I've seen in terms of how well it builds off of the world beyond the main story. Not only do we see multiple of the characters we already know and love, but we get to see how other people live and navigate this world outside of the hero academy that we typically follow. Koichi is a character with the same drive and determination as Deku, but isn't able to enroll in a hero course. Knuckle Duster is a pound-for-pound badass who can stand toe-to-toe with any hero or villain without hesitation. And Popstep gives us a bit of a different perspective, as an aspiring performer being her primary motivation. She is a vehicle to see how this world uses quirks into other industries beyond just being a hero, something that doesn't get very fleshed out in the main series. As I mentioned before, the cameos that we get from previously established characters is what this series really does best. Early on, we get to see an actual confrontation between Knuckle Duster and Eraserhead. They end up establishing a mutual understanding for the time being, but we get to see Eraserhead pop up a handful of times throughout the season. Because he is a character that fans already know and love, he makes for a very effective vehicle for receiving the point of view of pro heroes, which is necessary in a series that attempts to highlight the ideological differences between those who fight crime within the system and vigilantes who fight crime outside of the system. What really surprised me was getting to see Stain make an appearance in the series. He's first introduced as someone like Koichi or Knuckle Duster, someone who works outside of the system to deliver justice. However, his sense of justice is not aligned with our main characters. Stain, even in his early days, was a killer. Granted, he is going after villains who have caused harm to others. Having the previously established characters like Stain and Eraserhead existing on the extreme ends of the conversation around vigilantism is such an effective tool. It firmly establishes the two polar opposites of someone who operates by the book and someone who delivers justice in the form of mortal punishment. It allows our main characters to exist in the middle gray area and invites the viewer to identify their own morals within that framework. It also sets the stage for conversations around what it is to be a vigilante very effectively. Unfortunately, this might be how deep the story ever gets, and if I'm being honest, I don't think the series does enough to really deconstruct that concept beyond this, but it's something I hope that they tackle more in future seasons. About halfway through, we get a full conflict between Stain and Knuckle Duster, which was so much fun. The all-out punch that Knuckle gives to Stain felt as satisfying as any Detroit smash we see from All Might within the main series. We get to see Stain wrestling with the early version of what his radical views would become. We even get to see how Stain actually lost his nose, something I had previously assumed was just a stylistic choice from Horikoshi, but no, there's an actual backstory there. Popstep as a character is a fun mix to have in around, and I do appreciate the side plot of her building her career as a performer. That being said, her character does not have much else going on. It's clear that she has an innocent crush on Koichi. There is an obvious age gap, but the series does well to present Koichi's point of view of seeing her as a little sister more than anything. It doesn't ever feel too weird. That being said, the biggest problem in the series is the over-sexualization of Popstep. Not only are there unnecessary animated shots and scenes that are suggested, but the show even goes as far as to have side characters comment on how her butt is always showing when she's in public. This sexualization does not provide any commentary and does not develop the character of Pop or the characters around her one bit. All of that being said, while I do enjoy Popstep as a character, in this season she acts more as a sounding board for Koichi and doesn't actually have too many plot lines that I'm particularly interested in at this moment. But I am excited to see how the character grows in the future. Koichi's plot is all about self-discovery and the development of his personal confidence. He starts the story eager to help and will do anything to become a hero. As the season goes by, he learns how to hone in his quirk and find the various ways he can bring value to this world. And he's shown multiple times throughout to be a very capable hero and helps to save many people. Halfway through, we get a tease of what Koichi can really do as we see him leap into the air to save a woman and he discovers that he can fly. We haven't dug too deep into how this will manifest later on in the story, but it's exciting to know that Koichi has a lot more room to grow, not only as a character, but in terms of what he can physically do. They seemingly set up a potential more age-appropriate romance for Koichi between a character named Makoto that I am genuinely rooting for. Her character introduction actually helped move the show along a lot and also continues to give more perspective of how quirks are used in different perspectives in the society. Knuckle Duster's story is revealed to be a tragedy by the end of the season. Prior to the story, he had a wife and a daughter, but his wife ends up in a coma in the hospital, while his daughter, who he presumed dead or missing, actually has her body being taken over by a B quirk user, the same villain who was pumping Trigger into their community. Trigger is a quirk-enhancing drug that can turn the user into a large monster with more power and less intelligence. Most of the physical conflict that our characters face are caused by the B user's influence introducing Trigger to the lower-level criminals in their city. Not only did my heart break in pieces for Knuckle Duster and his family, but I found myself enjoying his face-off even more. Between his taser, defibrillator, witty daddy-daughter quips, and his satisfying blows with his brass knuckles, Knuckle Duster's scenes always steal the show and are easily the most interesting and fun sequences that we go through. After he finally restores his daughter and says goodbye to his wife, Knuckle Duster seemingly retires and leaves his brass knuckles and mask behind. I have a feeling that there is still more to Knuckle Duster's story for us to tackle in the future. I could be reaching, but I can't help but notice some parallels to Knuckle Duster and Endeavor. They both let their families down, but Knuckle Duster actually embodies what it means to face your mistakes, learn from them, and redeems himself through and through. Meanwhile, Endeavor himself has a redemption arc of sorts, but it feels way less earned and overall just more controversial. At the start of the story, our characters are all lonely and a bit lost, but by the end, they become a bit of a found family, and even begin to develop a community of others around. Being back in the My Hero Academia world was so much fun, and I was very impressed with how they fleshed out this corner of the story. Vigilantes was a very solid anime and one of the better spin-off series I've seen to date. I can't wait to see where our adventures take Koichi and the gang next. Listen, this series wasn't perfect, it wasn't blowing my mind or anything like that, but it was a lot of fun. And like I said, as a spinoff, it does its job perfectly. I feel like the series also lays the groundwork for a lot more plot moving forward. We still have the enemy who has access to this trigger drug that is like pumping into the city. We don't know what this is leading to. I have a feeling that All For One is somehow behind all of this. And moving forward, I would love to see an inclusion of All Might. I would even be excited to see what other characters they can fold into the plot from our main story. I also can't wait to see Koichi fully hone in his quirk and see exactly how far he can go. But yeah, for now, that's going to bring this video to a close. If I had to give this show a rating, I'd say a 7.5 or maybe even as high as an 8.0. It's very consistent and it has some moments of greatness, even though for the most part it isn't anything too crazy. What did you think about My Hero Academia Vigilantes, and are you excited to see where the season moves into the future? If you aren't familiar with the manga, I would love to hear any theories or any predictions down in the comments down below. But for now, my name is Darius, and remember that I love you.